It was a normal day. I had just finished my shift at the gas station on the south side of town. I was 24, living alone in a small apartment above a row of shops, the kind of place that looked ordinary until you noticed the cracks in the walls or the flickering hallway light. I usually got home around 11 p.m., ate a quick dinner, and watched TV until I fell asleep. That night, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I unlocked my apartment door, dropped my keys on the counter, and started heating up leftovers. The apartment smelled faintly of cleaning supplies I hadn't used in weeks, and the TV was playing some late-night news rerun. Everything was quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but I didn't think much of it. I had lived there for almost a year, and most nights were just like this. As I sat down with my plate, I noticed something strange out of the corner of my eye. A shadow moved in the hallway. I froze. There shouldn't have been anyone there. The building was quiet. I hadn't heard the elevator or any footsteps on the stairs. My first thought was that I was imagining it, tired, overworked, maybe even a little jumpy from the long shift. I got up and walked toward the hall, thinking I would just check to make sure. Nothing. The light was on, the doorways were empty, and the apartment next door looked dark and silent. I shrugged and told myself I'd just seen a trick of the light. But the feeling didn't leave me. I went back to the kitchen to grab a drink. The apartment felt smaller somehow, like the walls were closing in just a little. Then I heard it, a faint scrape, very soft, from the hallway, like someone dragging a foot across the floor. I stopped moving, listened. My heartbeat quickened even though I told myself it was nothing. Maybe an animal in the walls or a neighbor. I flipped on the hall light. Still nothing. But I couldn't shake it. The air felt heavier, like I wasn't alone. I started checking the doors and windows, making sure everything was locked. They were. Everything seemed fine. But then I heard a breath. Not mine. Not outside. Inside my apartment, coming from the hallway. I froze completely this time, gripping the counter. My mind raced. Maybe it was just a neighbor, a maintenance worker, someone who had a key. But no one should have been there. My stomach turned, and I felt a cold weight in my chest. For the first time, I realized that even in a normal, quiet place, something could be very wrong. I sat back down, trying to calm myself, telling myself I was imagining things. But in the corner of my vision, the shadow moved again. Just a shift in the darkness, barely noticeable. And then I heard it again. That slow, deliberate breathing, too close to ignore. My apartment felt like a trap, familiar yet suddenly alien. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it, someone, something, watching me. And that's when I knew. I wasn't alone. After that night, I kept telling myself it was just fatigue. I worked long shifts at the gas station, often closing late, and my apartment had always felt safe. It was on the second floor of a small building with 5 units, all connected by a narrow hallway that creaked with every step. The walls were thin, painted beige, with water stains near the ceiling, but it had been affordable and the location was convenient, just a 10-minute walk from the store. I usually spent my evenings alone, catching up on shows or scrolling through my phone. On some nights, my neighbor, Karen, a woman in her 40s who lived across the hall, would say hi or chat about the weather if our paths crossed. She was friendly but private, and I liked the quiet of the building. Most tenants were older, retired, or just passing through, so it was rare to hear more than the occasional TV sound or someone locking their door. That particular night, after my shift ended around 11 p.m., I returned to my apartment like any other night. The streets were mostly empty, the city lights blurred through the cold air, and the wind carried the faint smell of exhaust and late-night takeout. I unlocked my door, flipped on the lights, and felt a small sense of relief to be home. I poured myself a drink and sat at the small kitchen table, eating leftovers I had packed earlier. Nothing felt unusual. Everything was familiar. The chipped counter, the worn rug, the stack of unopened mail by the door. I remember glancing out the window toward the alley behind the building. A few streetlights flickered, casting long shadows, but no one was there. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I felt comfortable, even a little tired, and started planning my next day. Work again, maybe stop by the grocery store on my way home for something quick to eat. My life was simple, repetitive, and mostly uneventful. I had my phone beside me, charger plugged in, just in case I needed to call someone. My only real company was the occasional text from my friend Mike, who lived across town, checking in or joking about his latest project at work. Tonight, I didn't hear from him, but that was normal too. It wasn't lonely. I had learned to enjoy my own space. Even though everything seemed ordinary, small details caught my attention as I moved around the apartment. The floorboards in the hallway creaked in a way they hadn't before, and I noticed the closet door in the bedroom, slightly ajar. I must have left it that way in the morning. I shut it and leaned against the wall for a moment, telling myself not to overthink it. Life was usually like this, quiet, predictable, safe. But underneath that calm routine, I felt a strange tension I couldn't explain. It wasn't fear, exactly, just an uneasy awareness that something was off. The apartment, which normally felt secure, suddenly felt too quiet. Every small sound, the hum of the heater, the distant rumble of traffic, seemed sharper. And even though I didn't know it yet, that small shift in atmosphere was the only warning I would get before the night changed completely. Around midnight, I decided to clean up a little before going to bed. The apartment felt normal, but a small part of me couldn't shake the unease. I started with the kitchen, wiping down the counters and putting away dishes. Every clink of a plate against the sink sounded louder than it should have, echoing through the quiet apartment. As I moved toward the living room, I thought I heard something from the hallway, a soft shuffle, like someone shifting their weight on the floorboards. I paused and held my breath, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint wind rattling the window frame. I told myself it was probably the building settling. I had heard it before, but it felt different this time. Slower. Heavier. I continued cleaning, but my ears stayed alert. From the bedroom came a faint sound, almost like a whisper, though I wasn't sure. I stopped again, staring toward the door. The closet, which I had closed earlier, now looked slightly off, like the door wasn't fully shut. I told myself it was my imagination. Still, I couldn't ignore the small chill running down my back. By 1 a.m., the apartment was completely dark except for the streetlight filtering through the blinds. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth, and that's when I noticed it, soft, irregular tapping from the wall behind the sink. Top, top, pause. Top. It wasn't rhythmic like pipes or plumbing. It felt deliberate. I froze, toothpaste in my mouth, and listened. Then it stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing. Normally felt secure, suddenly felt too quiet. Every small sound, the hum of the heater, the distant rumble of traffic, seemed sharper. And even though I didn't know it yet, that small shift in atmosphere was the only warning I would get before the night changed completely. Around midnight, I decided to clean up a little before going to bed. The apartment felt normal, but a small part of me couldn't shake the unease. I started with the kitchen, wiping down the counters and putting away dishes. Every clink of a plate against the sink sounded louder than it should have, echoing through the quiet apartment. As I moved toward the living room, I thought I heard something from the hallway, a soft shuffle, like someone shifting their weight on the floorboards. I paused and held my breath, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint wind rattling the window frame. I told myself it was probably the building settling. I had heard it before, but it felt different this time. Slower. Heavier. I continued cleaning, but my ears stayed alert. From the bedroom came a faint sound, almost like a whisper, though I wasn't sure. I stopped again, staring toward the door. The closet, which I had closed earlier, now looked slightly off, like the door wasn't fully shut. I told myself it was my imagination. Still, I couldn't ignore the small chill running down my back. By 1 a.m., the apartment was completely dark except for the streetlight filtering through the blinds. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth, and that's when I noticed it, soft, irregular tapping from the wall behind the sink. Top, top, pause. Top. It wasn't rhythmic like pipes or plumbing. It felt deliberate. I froze, toothpaste in my mouth, and listened. Then it stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing. I went back to the living room, trying to act normal. I told myself I was tired. Maybe I was imagining patterns where none existed. But the apartment felt smaller, heavier, as if someone else was sharing the space with me. Every shadow seemed too dark, every creak of the floor too loud. Then came the footsteps. Slow, soft, barely audible, but definitely there. Down the hallway. I could feel them moving closer, not in a rush, just deliberate steps, like someone pacing. I froze, my stomach knotting. I told myself no one could be in the apartment. The door was locked. I lived alone. Yet my instincts screamed otherwise. I sat down on the couch trying to stay calm and focused on breathing. But the sense of being watched wouldn't go away. I glanced toward the hallway again. A shadow shifted near the kitchen entrance, small and dark, slipping out of sight the second I looked directly. My heart was racing now, though I forced myself to sit still. The apartment that had always been familiar felt alien. Every creak, every tap, every subtle shift of light seemed magnified. I realized I couldn't ignore it. Something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was or how long it had been there, but I could feel its presence. By 2 a.m., I was moving slower, quieter, checking each door and window as if confirming my safety might make it real. But no matter how many times I checked, that heavy, uncomfortable feeling lingered. I couldn't shake the thought that someone or something was in the apartment with me, and it wasn't planning to leave. By 2:30 a.m., I stopped trying to convince myself I was imagining things. The apartment no longer felt quiet or safe. Every creak, every distant hum of traffic felt magnified. I was moving cautiously now, keeping lights low, checking corners, making sure the doors and windows were locked. Yet the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. It started with small movements. A shadow flickered at the edge of the living room, disappearing when I turned to look directly. Then came a soft thud, like something falling in the bedroom. I froze, staring at the door. I knew I hadn't dropped anything. My pulse raced, and I felt my body tighten with fear. I tried to stay calm, telling myself to rationalize, to breathe, but then I heard it, a slow, deliberate scraping sound coming from the bedroom closet. It wasn't fast, not panicked. It was patient, methodical. My stomach dropped. I moved toward the kitchen, thinking maybe I could make a phone call, maybe text someone, but my hands shook too much to hold the phone steadily. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Barely audible at first, coming from the bedroom hallway. Slow, deliberate, moving closer. I froze mid-step, pressed myself against the wall, listening. Each footfall echoed in my chest. There was no way to ignore it. Someone was inside my apartment. I ducked into the living room and crouched behind the couch, careful not to make a sound. The footsteps paused for a moment, then resumed. The presence felt closer now, almost at the doorway. My breathing was shallow, barely audible, but I could hear his soft, steady, deliberate. It was enough to tell me this wasn't a random break-in. He had been here before. He knew the apartment. He was comfortable moving inside it. The lights in the apartment flickered. I didn't touch them. I didn't dare. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward me, and I felt trapped in a space that had once felt normal. My eyes darted toward the bedroom doorway. For a split second, I thought I saw a dark figure step back into the shadows, then vanish. I realized I had no way out. The front door was too far, and stepping into the hallway meant exposing myself. The fire escape was behind the kitchen, but reaching it without being noticed felt impossible. Every exit I considered was blocked, not physically, but by the knowledge that he was moving through the apartment, somewhere nearby, watching. I crouched low, trying to make myself small, but it didn't help. I could hear the soft brushing of clothes, the subtle shift of weight, the careful, almost silent breathing of someone who was aware I was here. I couldn't see him clearly, but I could feel him moving closer. The apartment felt smaller, suffocating. Every shadow seemed alive. Every corner felt like a hiding place he might already be in. By 3 a.m., I was convinced he was inside the bedroom. I could hear the subtle creak of the floorboards shifting under his weight. I realized he wasn't just a stranger. He had spent time here before. He knew the layout. He was patient. And he was waiting for me to make a mistake. I pressed my back against the wall, heart racing, trapped in a place that had always been mine, now invaded. I didn't know if I could get out without being noticed, and I knew one wrong move could change everything. By 3:05 a.m., I couldn't ignore it any longer. I heard the bedroom door creak open. Slowly. I pressed myself flat against the living room wall, heart hammering, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. My phone was in my pocket, but even holding it felt dangerous. One wrong move, and he would know I was here. I could hear him moving closer. Not running, not panicked, just deliberate steps across the carpet, careful, but steady. I dared a glance toward the doorway and saw him. A dark figure, hunched slightly, almost blending with the shadows. He wasn't masked, but I couldn't make out his face. Just the outline. The way he moved, he was calm, confident, and aware of every sound I made. I realized I had to get out. Slowly, I crept toward the kitchen, keeping my back to the wall. My mind raced. Fire escape. Only a few steps, and I could be outside. But then he made a sound, a soft shuffle, turning toward me. I froze, stomach dropping. He was closer than I thought. In a split second, I bolted. My sneakers squeaked against the floor. I heard him shout something low and guttural behind me, and I didn't stop. I slammed into the kitchen, yanking open the window leading to the fire escape. Cold air hit my face. I scrambled up the metal steps, hands raw from gripping the railing. Behind me, I heard the apartment door open again. Footsteps pounding now. Faster, but I didn't look back. I made it to the roof of the building next door, heart pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. I dropped down carefully to the alley and ran, not even checking where I was going, just moving. The sound of him chasing me, or maybe just following me, was almost there, echoing off the walls. I reached the street and saw the glow of headlights. A passing car slowed, and I ran toward it, waving my arms. The driver honked, and I shouted for help, my voice cracking. I could hear the footsteps stop. He didn't follow me onto the street. Finally, the police arrived. I gave them my apartment number, explained everything. They went inside while I stayed back, shaking, hands covered in scrapes from the fire escape. When the officers came out, the apartment was empty. No sign of him. No sign he had taken anything. Just the same cluttered apartment, now silent, but I knew better. They told me I had been lucky. That he may have been watching me for days, weeks, even months. That the closet, the small crawl spaces, all of it could have been his hiding spots. He had slipped out before the cops could find him. I tried to calm down in the back of the squad car, but I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dark figure, hunched in the shadows, just standing and waiting. The apartment had felt like home for a year, and in an instant, it had become a trap I barely escaped. Even now, days later, I keep checking every door, every window, every dark corner of my apartment. I can't shake the memory of him, quiet, patient, and watching, and the terrifying thought that he might still be somewhere, waiting for the next mistake. It wasn't until the police left and I returned to my apartment a few days later that I realized the full scope of what had happened. I walked through the room slowly, flipping on lights, checking every corner, every closet. Everything seemed normal at first. The small traces he left, scraps of food, a faint odor, a displaced book, were subtle, easily ignored if you didn't know what to look for. Then I went into the bedroom. My heart sank when I opened the closet. It looked empty at first, just as I had feared. But then I noticed something at the back. A panel in the wall, slightly loose. My hands shook as I pushed it. Behind it was a small crawl space, just large enough for a person to fit in. The smell hit me immediately. Damp, stale, and faintly sour. I crouched down and peered inside. There were blankets, a few empty food containers, even an old, folded shirt. He had been living there. Not hours, not a night. He had been hiding in my apartment for weeks, maybe months, in that tiny space I had never even noticed. I felt sick, realizing just how long he had been watching me. Every time I thought I had been alone, he could have been right there, in the wall, waiting. That shadow I saw in the living room, the soft breathing in the hallway, The faint scraping sounds, they weren't random. They were him, testing boundaries, letting me know he was there without revealing himself fully. The more I looked, the more details emerged. A small gap under the doorframe where he could peek in. Smudges on the windowsill from him climbing the fire escape. Every normal sound I had ignored. The creaking floorboards, the tap of water running in the sink, the faint whispers of wind through the cracks, was part of his presence. He wasn't just in my apartment that night. He had been there all along. The police confirmed it couldn't have been anyone else. There were no signs of forced entry besides the panel he used. He had been clever, patient, and extremely familiar with the apartment. The twist that hit me hardest: he hadn't stolen anything. He didn't need to. His goal wasn't money or objects. It was the observation, the control, the quiet power of knowing I was there, and he wasn't being caught. I kept thinking about the nights I had felt watched. The little hints I brushed off, the unease I tried to rationalize, they were all real. Every shadow, every footstep, every sound of movement wasn't coincidence. They were intentional. And the most terrifying part was that I couldn't have known when it started. There were no warning signs, no motives, nothing that could have prepared me for it. I sat on the edge of my bed, shaking. The apartment had felt like mine for a year, familiar and safe. But now I realized it had been a trap without walls, a home I thought I controlled that had been invaded for weeks. He had been there, unseen, patient, hiding in plain sight. And I had lived every day, completely unaware. The thought that he had observed me for that long, silently, calculating, waiting for the moment to reveal himself, it changed everything. It wasn't a random intruder. It wasn't a one-night scare. He had been inside my life, inside my space, and I had never known. Even after moving out of that apartment, the memory of him hasn't left me. I found a new place across town, smaller, in a busier area, hoping that the noise and activity would make me feel safer. But it doesn't. Every time I walk through the front door, I check the locks twice, even 3 times. Every closet, every cupboard, every space that could hide someone is inspected carefully. I tell myself it's precaution. But the truth is, it's more than that. Sometimes, at night, when I'm lying in bed, I hear sounds that remind me of him. A soft scrape, like nails dragging on wood. The faintest shadow passing across a wall that should be empty. My first thought is always rational: a branch outside, a neighbor, the pipes settling. But the second thought, the one I can't silence, whispers that it could be him. That he somehow knows where I am now. That he's still watching. I've checked my apartment for hidden spaces, nothing like the crawl space he used before. Yet the fear lingers. I catch myself scanning every mirror and reflective surface for movement behind me, imagining a figure crouched in a shadow just out of sight. I lock doors multiple times before going to bed, sometimes in the middle of the night, waking up to double-check, convinced I hear soft footsteps, only to find nothing. Friends tell me I'm paranoid. They say it was just a one-time break-in, that he's gone, and I'm safe now. I want to believe them. I try to believe them. But my instincts don't lie. He was patient, clever. He lived unseen in a space I never noticed, observing me for weeks. That kind of person doesn't just disappear. That kind of person waits. There are nights when I feel it the most. I'll be cooking dinner, and a shadow seems too precise, moving with intention. I'll be brushing my teeth and hear a faint creak, like a floorboard that shouldn't be there. I tell myself it's impossible, that someone couldn't get in. But the images of him crouched in the crawl space, silent, patient, calculating, keep coming back. The apartment where I thought I was safe becomes a memory of something I survived, but not escaped from. I've considered installing cameras, alarms, anything that could give me peace. But part of me worries that making it obvious would only give him notice, that he's still out there, watching, waiting, knowing I've moved, but knowing too that I'll be cautious, predictable. He could be anywhere. And the worst part, the thought I can't get out of my head, is simple. I don't know who he was. I don't know why he chose me, or what he might do next. I survived the night, I escaped, I moved. But I feel his presence in the quiet, in the dark, in the spaces I think are mine. Sometimes, I wake in the middle of the night, convinced I hear breathing just beyond my door. My heart races. I check everything. It's always empty. But I can't shake the feeling that one day, it won't be. That one day, the quiet will be broken not by my imagination, but by him. I still don't know if he's gone. I don't know if he's out there right now. And sometimes, when the street is quiet and I'm alone, I feel like he's closer than I want to admit. And I can't stop thinking that maybe, just maybe, he never really left at all.